Hi, this is Diane Mourglia Swerdlow for Expansions.com, and as I'm speaking right now, Stuart is probably spending a few hours in Istanbul on his way to Bangkok. So if you are in that area, be sure that you see him for consultations, for the Asian premiere of Montauk Chronicles, for his wonderful seminars that he's going to be putting on there. And also it's kind of interesting because, as most of you know, November 5th, of course, was his birthday. And he was in Los Angeles, long story short, and Los Angeles really means City of Angels. Well, we were reminded by our Bangkok sponsor that Bangkok also means City of Angels. So I told him he's definitely connecting to the angelic frequencies. So if you're we're in LA and had a chance to see him, that's great. If you have a chance to see him in Bangkok, that's great too. And here in the U.S., of course, the big news is our elections. I'm not sure how big of news that it is to you. I did hear that Obama gave his last campaign talk yesterday in Iowa and actually shed a tear. I'm not exactly sure why, but I guess anyway, for whatever reason, he wants you to think he's a very emotional person. So lots of things going around the internet today. Probably will. Personally, I'll be surprised if he doesn't win, but we'll see what happens. And of course, the other thing that's going around the news is the Frankenstorm or Hurricane Sandy, with another nor'easter on the tail to hit the East Coast. So I hope all of you who are in that area or watching it around the world are reading my holiday blog, because I did address the Frankenstorm, the Sandy. I've addressed a lot of the programming issues, the twirling and swirling Wizard of Oz programming on the holiday blog. So I hope you're reading that, because that will give you some clues as to what's going on and why. And then, interestingly enough, yesterday, which is Monday, November 4th, Ringwood, New Jersey actually experienced a 2.0 earthquake, which struck at 1:19 a.m. Now, of course, 1:19, that's another 11, and our friend Gary, the numbers guy, just loves these 11s out there. So 1:19, excuse me, and it said the last earthquake that New Jersey had was a 2.2 recorded in February of 2010. So I mentioned that to Stuart when I had a chance to speak to him yesterday in LA, and his comment was, well, somebody really doesn't like New Jersey, and I happen to agree with that. So keep your eyes open, but do your deprogramming work, read the holiday blogs. We have a holiday sale package that I just put up and announced. And we also have a really good deal going on with email consultations, and for a little bit more you can add on a phone consultation, because between now and the end of the year is when people are especially hit hard with their programming issues. It happens all through the year, but people are especially being bombarded now. So take advantage of those sales that we have going on and the free information we have on the site. And of course, we're also working on our pounding prosperity, or how am I saying that? The 5 P's. We are going to pound poverty programming into prosperity punched together, and that's what we're doing on the member blog this month, and we're getting really good responses. So if you have poverty programming, you want to participate in that. Another P for you. All right, now besides the other storm on the way, I have lots of interesting stories for you. Unfortunately, we don't have Stuart here to make his funny faces for you, but I'll have to do. Make your own funny faces. Maybe look in the mirror and pretend you're Stuart. Okay, now in the alien world, we have alien life that requires an asteroid belt like ours. This data has come in from NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope. So now we know in order to have alien life, we need an asteroid belt. So they're setting you up for something. Then we find out that Mars soil is now similar to the volcanic sand on Hawaii's Mauna Kea. This was from NASA's Curiosity rover. So the Mars information keeps out there in the news. It's keeping you apprised of what's going on out there that is similar to Earth. And now we have volcanic eruptions, which were spotted on Io, which is Jupiter's pizza moon. This was done by the SETI telescope, and another telescope we find out is now the world's biggest one, which is seeking the origins of the universe, and that one is located in Australia. That is a $155 million telescope, and what have we got? We have another 155, which uses radio cameras to scan the sky much more rapidly than existing telescopes. So, lots of things going on in the alien world, and that's going to continue, as you know. All right, now brainwashing. Now this term is actually being used these days, and last week I told you about a television show. You'll have to go back and read about that, which is seeing if they can brainwash people to actually assassinate somebody, ordinary people supposedly. This week we have The Catcher in the Rye. Now, I did not read this book, but Stuart told me when he was in school that this was actually required reading, and was for a lot of other people, I understand. So, the title of this particular article was, Does Catcher in the Rye Brainwash People? This is a novel about an adolescent boy's contempt for humanity, and it says that it's been linked to assassins Mark David Chapman, John Hinckley, and Lee Harvey Oswald. Conspiracy theorists suggest that the FBI or the CIA used the book as a mind control device in order to orchestrate the assassinations of John Lennon, John F. Kennedy, and the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life. Now it continues, this article says, while there is no evidence directly linking Salinger's novel of adolescent angst to mind control, is it possible that the same book being found in the possession of 3 assassins is much more than mere coincidence? Well, again, you know, maybe they all have the Bible too, so why are they focusing on Catcher in the Rye? And there, apparently this year, I saw something on David Icke's site, which one of his books was mentioned as being found in the home of someone who committed a crime. Now, I think it's interesting they're bringing this out. They've only mentioned it once. So are they going to start mentioning other books as a way to ban books and keep public knowledge or the public's right to know out of the public domain? I don't know. But this is how they get into the frequency. They start mentioning a little bit, and next thing you know, things are turned every which way, like gun control and so forth. It's just another way to control the people. Programmed people, that's always a big thing here. Of course, more zombie stuff, that's not going to go away. So I'm going to tell you that they wrote that there are actually, I guess, clinical diagnoses for some of these. There is one issue, or a psychiatric condition is what it's called, I guess. It's called the walking corpse syndrome, which is a real-life zombie disease. Technically, it's called Cotard delusion. It was originally described in Paris more than a century ago, and apparently Cotard sufferers believe that they are dead, they're walking amongst the living, and in some cases they believe they never even existed at all, or they're missing some of their internal organs. Psychiatrists are calling this a delusion of negation. However, I'm calling it programming. Then there's another disease called a Capgras delusion. And Capgras delusion, they actually believe that people around them have been replaced by somebody else. Now, again, this is programming, and I actually know people who are extremely sane who believe that their loved ones have been replaced by somebody else. And oftentimes, believe it or not, there is something that can be, your energy field can be changed around you, so you appear to be one person instead of somebody else. But again, they're calling this an illusion. And I know people who said, I know this was my mother, and I know when it wasn't my mother. So these things happen out there, and it's happening so often, apparently, that now it actually has a psychiatric condition name. And the last one that I want to talk to you about is clinical lycanthropy. That's how you say it. It's a delusion in which people think they can shapeshift into a wolf or other wild animal. Now, if you are familiar with any of the indigenous people's work, they actually have shifted into other animals. And of course, we know about shifting the reptilians, and again, what can be done to energy fields. So when you know that energy work, that such as what we teach, and you go up to your oversoul and you take a look at what's happening around you, these things can happen. And they're telling you about it, but they're calling it a psychiatric condition. So again, take a look at what's being told to you so that you can determine for yourself what's real and what's not real. Okay, copycat killing, programmed to kill. Now, following on the heels of that very sad situation in New York, that the mother came home to find two of her children stabbed to death by her nanny, there was another one, a Naperville babysitter in Illinois, who was charged in the demonic stabbing death of two children that she was watching over. So, again, no matter where you are, all the situations are being set up so that you do not feel safe by anybody. A boy, 10 years old, was accused of killing his, here's our word, neo-Nazi father. And the boy said he was influenced by the plot of a show, a television show called Criminal Minds. The boy told police that he figured that if he killed his neo-Nazi father, he might not get into trouble because that's what happened on a television program that he had watched, and nothing happened to that boy, so he didn't think anything would happen to him. He also says that I thought it would be a good idea to end it, to shoot my dad in the head. I shot him because I was upset. He was always taking off on me, and he also hit me. And now this I found particularly interesting because his next statement actually happened here in Michigan about a year or so ago. It says at one point in the video, the boy says he thought his dad would recover. I was choosing who should leave, and I chose my dad. I thought he would get out of the hospital, and maybe we could go back to being friends and start over. That's unquote. What happened in Michigan was there was a boy, and they never told the situation about why he killed his grandfather. He never talked about abuse of any kind, but the boy said, I stood there with a gun, I watched my grandfather sleep, and I wasn't sure if I should kill him or kill myself, and I chose to kill my grandfather. Now here's again a boy saying, I was choosing who should leave, and I chose my dad. So again, they're making conscious choices. This boy that happened in Michigan, he was older, he was middle teen. This is a 10-year-old boy, and I'm telling you again about, and I'm not exactly sure why they're setting up the children, but they're charging the children as adults. And right here the boy is explaining that he doesn't have the capacity to understand what death is or what would happen. The boy says, I thought he would get out of the hospital and maybe we could go back to being friends and start over. These children don't have the mental capacity, the life experience to understand the ramifications of what they're actually doing. Okay, then we have a Polish coffin maker's topless calendar that outrages the Catholic Church. Now remember, if they want to put something in the public domain, they do something and then they put it out there. And again, if I had a controversial calendar, I really doubt if it would make the national news. But here we go. There's one image from the 2013 edition of this calendar by the Polish coffin maker that has a blonde model wearing only a skimpy thong with, get this, a snake draped around her death, reclining on a coffin. In another picture, a woman wearing a crimson corset is depicted pulling out the heart of a man lying on a casket. Now, the Catholic Church has condemned the calendar as inappropriate. A church spokesman has said that human death should be treated with solemnity and not mixed up with sex. So, obviously, they want this out there for you to see. They're making a big deal out of it, and here we go. So, you tell me. To me, it sounds like a lot of ritual going on, and the Catholic Church, of course, has got their name involved in it. Lots of stuff going on. As always, China. Their one-child policy. The government think tank urges country's leaders to start phasing out the policy immediately. Now, growing up, this was a big deal. I always heard about China had a one-child policy, and I heard about how they would hunt the women down and force them to have abortions, and all kinds of horrible things, and that people were actually drowning their girls because the girls would go off and live with the in-laws where a boy would take care of the parents in life. And whether or not this is true, I don't know, but this was the propaganda that I was fed growing up, and I believed it because this is what I heard. So as I got a little bit older, I was thinking about how do you raise an army? Well, the way you raise an army is you get rid of all the female population so that the males don't have anybody to marry, therefore they're isolated, and you have a huge army in the ready, because if these men don't have women to marry, why not just join the armed services, because they're not going to have a family. There are no girls out there. So perhaps now they have a big enough army, I don't know, because not too long ago, I'd say for me maybe roughly 10 years ago, I knew a couple who came from China, and they were part of the Chinese elite. The couple had one child already, which was a girl. And the mother got pregnant, had another girl, and went back to China to have the baby. And I thought this was very odd. You know, why would she go back to China? Because of the one-child policy. But somebody who knew this couple better than I did told me that she was going back to have the baby. The baby would be left with her mother and raised until the child was 3 years old. And at that time, the mother would return and get the child and bring her back. And they told me that this was common practice. Then I said, well, I thought they could only have one child. And this other couple said, well, that's for the lower classes. For the higher classes, for the elite, all I have to do is pay a small tax, which is the equivalent maybe $100 US, and they could have as many children as they wanted. So without having this behind-the-scenes information, this sounds interesting that the government has a one-child policy. But who do they have the one-child policy for? So think about this, what you know, and think about what I'm telling you, and put two and two together, and let's see what happens with it. Okay, now good news for you if you live in the UK, because the job center, and when you're unemployed, because the job centers there are offering free spray tans to, if you're unemployed and looking for work. Yes, that's right, free spray tans, because they want you to feel better about yourself. And if you feel better, you're more likely to get a job. Personally, what's in the free spray tans, that's what I would like to know, and I would not want those chemicals sprayed on me. But your choice if you're in the UK and unemployed and looking for work. Now we're also hearing that one of the world's rarest whales has been seen for the first time in New Zealand. Up until now, all we have known about is the spade-toothed beaked whale was from 3 partial skulls collected from New Zealand and Chile over a 140-year period. It is remarkable that we know almost nothing about such a mammal, says a marine biologist at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. And then she continues, this is the first time this species has ever been seen as a complete specimen, and we were lucky enough to find 2 of them. Well, how did they find 2? These 2 happened to beach themselves in New Zealand. They don't talk about why they're beached and what's going on, and again, we've talked to you about what's going on under the ocean, that the animals are beaching themselves and doing all kinds of strange things. So here we have, again, these people are thrilled because they have a specimen, and we're talking about what's going on under there that's creating this to happen. Now, in Washington State today, in the elections, they are voting on whether or not to legalize cannabis for recreational use. And of course, all kinds of issues will come forward, and as I told you, sooner or later this will happen. However, they also tell you the truth behind what's going on. It's just you have to look for it. So here we have researchers in Norway who claim that they have found new evidence to support their theory that cannabis use causes temporary cognitive breakdown in non-psychotic people risking long-term psychosis. And I personally have witnessed this happen with people who I have known for many years and who absolutely became psychotic and fearful. So here we have it by the researchers in Norway. They claim that they tested 26 schizophrenics, some with a history of cannabis use, and tested their ability to listen and repeat certain syllables. The scientists believe that the study's results imply that cannabis use increases the risk of development of psychotic symptoms, imitating the cognitive weakness that is prevalent in schizophrenics. So keep this in mind and make choices that are beneficial to you and not harmful to you. Last but not least, presentiment study. Now these are things that I've been talking about in many of our classes. This study says that people's bodies know a big event is coming just before it happens, according to a new study that was published October 17th in the journal Frontiers of Perceptions. The claim is that events can be predicted without any cues, says a Northwestern University neuroscientist who co-authored the study. This evidence suggests the effect is real but small, and the question is, how does it work? So what they're finding is that the physical responses before something unpleasant happened included heart rate change, pupil dilation, and brain activity, usually between 1 and 10 seconds before people see something scary. Okay, they still found a presentiment effect, which measures a physiological excitement change seconds before an event. The findings suggest that people's bodies subconsciously sense the future when something important is about to happen, even if the people don't know that it's about to happen. So this is interesting because I have been talking to you, and I talk to you in most of our classes, about understanding frequency and how that arrives before the actual event happens. And we've talked about this in detail in the Understanding Frequency course, which I don't think is posted yet, the Gold Membership section, but will eventually be posted. We will be talking about this in the January 2013 Hyperspace Oversoul Extravaganza. If you haven't signed up for that, you have a little bit of time left, a couple of months still, but we're getting a really good group from around the world that is coming. So if this is your interest and you really want to get in there and dig, I suggest you sign up immediately. And of course, if you want a holiday and have fun with Stuart and I in Suriname and Aruba, and get out of your humdrum everyday type of life and throw some activity in there that's going to shake you up to end the new year on a good note and start the new, or in the old year on a good note, start the new year on a fun note, and get something different going on in your mind pattern, you'll want to join us in the Suriname event. So lots of good stuff that's happening out there for you. So anyway, I know it's never as exciting when Stuart's not here presenting with me, but I always enjoy having the opportunity to visit. Leave him a note on the Facebook page. His new Huffington Post article is up. I'd like to ask you please to go to Huffington Post and look that up. It's about his Russia trip. And if you can make your post on the Huffington Post article, that's great, because he gets points the more you post on there. And it can be good or bad, so if it's up to you, if you want to put something bad out there, hey, that's just fine too. Because I know some people do, and they think they're actually hurting us, but instead they're actually helping us. So whatever you want to post on the Huffington Post, be sure to tweet it, share it on your Facebook page, whatever you can do on all his Huffington Post blogs, because we want to get him up in the blogger status world, so to speak, on Huffington Post. And the more you do it, the more people are aware of Hyperspace Oversoul work. So thank you again very much for your support. We appreciate those of you who are making your monthly contributions on our membership blog, because that's helping us move forward with the next step in our site, which we will be announcing to you shortly after the first of the year. We are beginning it behind the scenes, but I like to have things a little bit more coalesced before I actually tell you what that's going to be. I will be resuming my cooking podcast soon, and when I complete my current set of research that I've been working on the last few months, which is going to be fun and very enlightening for all of you as well. So thank you again for joining me. Janet Diane Mourglia Swerdlow, expansions.com. Bye-bye now.